Hi, Maud. This is Ray Bone. I'm here to give you a final legislative update for the regular session in 2022. And frankly, as you all probably read in the papers and heard on the news, many things have been left undone, not completed. And I think there's still some questions about whether or not it ever will be. But before I get into that, what I'd like to say is that it was another interesting session. A lot of discussion and sometimes no discussion for days on end on some of the more critical bills. But in the end, they had what they call an agreement, a global agreement, and with that, they were supposed to hurry through and get the spending bills taken care of as well as the tax bills. They did have a basic agreement on the tax bill, but unfortunately, the tax bill is typically the last bill to go through, and the reason that that is done is the tax bill is one of those bills that everybody typically wants because they have good provisions and enough good provisions to get lots of votes. So as a result, they hold the goodies till the end, and meanwhile everybody else has to take votes on spending issues. And when it became clear, or I think when the House Democrats thought that maybe that wasn't going to happen in two or three critical areas, they decided to hold the bill back. And as a result, the tax bill, which was basically agreed to and completed, was never finalized. And so it is sitting there in with about $4 billion worth of tax cuts in it, and those are not going to materialize. And at least not out of this session. And whether or not there's going to be a special session, I think is pretty much up in the air. It doesn't appear as though the Senate majority is too interested in coming back and in having a special session or participating in a special session. Obviously, the governor could call them back, but what would be the purpose of that unless there's some prior agreement? Um, so I think right now, I guess I would say, some of the more knowledgeable folks that I've talked to have indicated to me that it's probably a 50-50 chance that we'll have a special session. Right now, I think I counted there's like seven what I call major spending bills that haven't been agreed to yet. And the Environment and Natural Resources Finance Bill and Policy Bill was in fact agreed to, but at 11:45 on Sunday night. So as a result, there just wasn't time to process the bill and get it through both bodies. So that bill is virtually complete, but it just wasn't passed, and there may have been a few others like that. Um, so what we're doing now is waiting to see if, in fact, there will be a special session to complete these activities. Clearly, one of the besides the tax bill, you had the bonding bill, which was 1.6 million. That was being negotiated behind the scenes. None of us actually saw a copy of the bill, so we don't really know what's in it. But it was 1.6 billion, and I think of that, 150 million of that was going to be in cash, and all the rest were bonds. But evidently, they had some breakdowns at the end, so they couldn't get agreement on that. And as you know, the bonding bill requires, I think, 60% vote, and as a result, it's a little more difficult. And there's got to be with the number of majority versus minority, there has to be bipartisan help on that. Otherwise, it won't get passed, and that's true in both bodies. So that is a big element, a big deal that the bonding bill didn't get passed. The the bill that did pass that affected us the most, probably the watershed district was the Environment Natural Resources Policy and Supplemental Budget Bill, and that didn't really have much of anything in it at all for us. It did have what it didn't have was it didn't have the drainage registry in it, which some people thought should have gone to the drainage work group before it was actually put in the bill to be passed for their recommendations. I don't know if it's going to show up at the drainage work group as a request from the author for a set of recommendations or a recommendation on the bill as it was originally. So I haven't heard what the background is on that, but to begin with, that legislation, the entire bill, the House had around 280 million in that to spend in that bill, whereas the Senate had just $1 million or $2, $1 million or $2 million is all. So as a result, when the target came down, I think to $10 million. In other words, that's how much that particular committee had to spend, that leadership agreed on. Well, that obviously is a long distance. Actually, it's a long distance from the 1 or 2 million, much less the 280 million. So as a result, many of the things, most of what the House had in their legislation had to be stripped out, because even like the registry had a couple of $100,000 dedicated in it to Bowser to help implement that new program. So as far as legislative activity, I think that issue's off the table. But I would not be surprised if we don't see it in the drainage work group to see what that group would think about that bill and give them a chance to look at it. But again, I don't know. That's not a for sure. I think I'm speculating somewhat on that. There was in the tax bill, I haven't seen an actual copy of the tax bill in terms of what they agreed to. So I can't go into too much detail, but we do know that our general fund levy request was not in there. It was not heard in the House at all. The House basically, I was told, didn't really want anything to do with it. The Senate, it actually was heard in the policy committee and got a very good reaction. In fact, it passed out of the Senate Environment Policy Committee unanimous vote. Then we asked for a hearing in the Property Tax Committee and never received that hearing. So that's something else we're going to have to continue to work on. With that, I think the only provision in that bill was a 1.58 million to Bowser for 2022, fiscal year 2022, for the local road wetland replacement program. But they also threw in addition to that was a 1-year appropriation. They threw in a base appropriation for fiscal year 24 and thereafter of $765,000. Now that seems low, but at least it is a placeholder, and it's a base placeholder. So whatever can be added to that in the future, then I presume would stay in the base. And that's what that whole program needs is a base appropriation, so we don't have to go through this constant fighting for at least a certain base to begin with. And hopefully, after a while, that base would grow large enough to take care of that issue and properly fund that the way it should be funded. So with that's about all I have. We're obviously going to be monitoring and see what happens, and if there is a special session, we will be right there. And what they will do if there is a special session, or typically what they do, is they pick up all the bills that have been have been agreed to, plus they will try to come to final agreement on, I would say, would be the major bills. Like, for example, education finance, there's $1 billion laying on a table there. You got all the human services funding, any supplemental funding there would be on the table. So and of course, the tax bill. So there's billions there. So there's a lot of money at play at the Capitol, and they will just pick up where they left off. I believe all these committees, and then once they have an agreement on all those, what I would say are major bills, they would then have a one-day special session. Again, that's an assumption on my part. I think a pretty good assumption, but it is an assumption. One never knows what they're going to come up with, but that would be my best guess. So we will continue to monitor it and continue to see what happens, and we will certainly keep you informed. So with that, I'm going to sign off, and again, we will maybe talk to you again. Hopefully we will. Hopefully we'll have something to report legislatively as it relates to that special session. With that, thank you very much.